Good day, everyone. Welcome to another Steam Exchange AMA. It is 5:05 p.m. on 17th November, and with us today we have Neville Devecha, co-CEO and president of Steam Exchange, myself, Viraf, VP of Operations at Steam Exchange, and our esteemed guest, Dr. Ville Mäkelä, Professor of UX Design and Research at the Stratford School of Interaction Design and Business at the University of Waterloo. Welcome welcome
Thank you so much for having me. I have to say, Viraf, I think your audio is a little bit low, so I'm having a little bit of trouble.
My goodness, I'm going to try turning it up on my end. Give me just a second as well.
Okay.
I believe I'm maxed out. I might just have to speak louder. Is this any better, Ville?
It is a little bit better, yeah.
Okay, I will speak a little louder. There we go. Perfect. Once again, Ville, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. We know our entire community has been looking forward to this AMA, and so have we. We know you have an action-packed schedule as well, so thanks once again. We do have a set of questions laid out for you today, but maybe just as the best way to start, maybe you could just give us a small introduction on your background, and we can take it from there.
Okay, yeah, so thanks, Viraf, for the introduction. So my name is Ville Mäkelä. I'm an assistant professor at the Stratford School of Interaction Design and Business at the University of Waterloo. My background is in human-computer interaction, which we call HCI usually. I did initially start out as a computer scientist. I've also done some work in the industry as a web developer, software developer. I've done some game development as well, but I have since then built an academic career.
Awesome, Ville. So much. I do also want to give a shout out to the remainder of the team that is working hard on this research partnership. Dr. Ville is leading this engagement, but he is supported by Dr. Leah Zhang Kennedy, Dr. Leonard Knack, as well as full-time working on the project is Hilda Hadan, a PhD student at the University of Waterloo. So definitely shout out to them. I think, Ville, let's just dive straight into it. Maybe you could summarize some of the progress we've made thus far during this research partnership, and what aspects personally are you looking forward to most?
Yeah, sure. So far we have our sort of major milestone was a large-scale online survey that we ran a few months ago, where we, generally speaking, explored the perceptions and attitudes and concerns regarding cryptocurrency. The particularly interesting part here, I would say, was that we surveyed both experienced crypto investors as well as those who were interested in crypto but had not yet made any investments for one reason or another. So we explored on one hand what has prevented people from making cryptocurrency investments, but also how investors have experienced crypto investments and what they wish they would have known before doing so. From these findings, we can begin to formulate content for cryptocurrency education. This is one of the major next steps in our project. And we were also able to identify a number of ways how cryptocurrency platforms could be improved. So we are now in the process of helping develop a learning game, as well as developing educational content for it. As far as what aspects I personally look forward to, firstly, I would say I look forward to testing the early prototype of the learning game with real users and seeing how it's received and how it develops over time. And on the other hand, I'm also looking forward to engaging with the HCI community and sort of bringing the cryptocurrency community and the HCI community together and seeing what impact we can make from that perspective.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that summary. I think what was interesting from the survey as well that we saw was the large bandwidth of age ranges as well as the different countries that took part in the survey. So it was honestly a really robust control group that we started off with, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. We were even a little bit surprised by that when we ran our survey, but it was pretty clear to us from the start that we do not want to focus just on North America or just on Western countries. We also spoke about that with you guys several times, that your audience is also global, international, and we do want to account for that in our work.
Definitely, definitely. We did have, I think, some of our community members take part in that survey as well. So it was great there. Perfect. I think we can move on to the next question. So just gamified learning in general, right? If we have an overview or look at that bucket, what are some of the advantages you see there versus maybe traditional forms of education? Would you say the ability to retain information there is superior to other forms? What are your thoughts there?
Mm-hmm. Okay. First, I guess it's maybe worth making a distinction between gamification and game-based learning. In short, gamification applies game elements to learning activities outside of the gaming context, whereas game-based learning involves including learning activities in games or game-like environments. And broadly speaking, in this project, we are interested in covering both of these approaches, and this was also part of our survey as well, where we were looking at sort of initial response to these different approaches. Gamified learning in general is complex. It has many potential benefits. It is not necessarily inherently superior, so we need to be a little bit careful there. But gamified learning can be extremely engaging and motivating and fun. And it does have the potential to improve retention, so that things that users or players learn about, they are more likely to remember those things later on. Gamified learning can also improve soft skills like problem solving in general.
Definitely. Neville, my apologies. I did see the mic unmuted on the previous question.
No, for sure. So I was just going to say, and it kind of touches on both questions, is that, in the research element, we found, and actually what was surprising, because it aligned with kind of what we were trying to accomplish, was the reasons people didn't get into crypto or got out of crypto, right? And learning was a huge, the response we got around learning being the issue with not staying in crypto or not getting into crypto in the first place was huge, which was actually very enlightening for us, in the sense that, we set out on this journey to create ease of use, right? Build an ecosystem that is, number one, easy to use. It functions very well in the sense that, there's not too many bells and whistles. We wanted to have a very rudimentary platform for new users and new adopted users to use. And it ties into this gamified learning experience. And through the research we found, which I found very interesting, is that it aligns very well with the research we did in the very beginning. So it was very, very cool to see that. And you're absolutely right? With the advantages of gamified learning, myself on a personal level, I do find gamified versions of anything better for learning from my perspective. Everyone learns in different ways, and we all, of course, want to offer learning in multiple different formats, but gamified definitely helps keep you engaged, and you nailed it on the head with that one, right? And the retention that you get from gamified learning is a lot better, in my opinion.
Sure.
Yeah, and I could add to that as well. I think trust plays a huge role in the cryptocurrency space, and we also found that in the survey too, where there are massive amounts of resources for education about cryptocurrency, or for remaining up to date about the recent developments, but people generally report a difficulty identifying trustworthy and up to date sources for that. So this will be a huge thing for us as well going forward.
Absolutely. I think, just from a personal note as well, for people who are in the crypto space, if we look at current forms or methods that we actually get information right now, right? Maybe there's small private groups that share tips and tricks, info. Maybe you follow a few Twitter influencers that share a couple of threads or YouTube videos, but there's no sort of one robust place where you can have an interactive element that takes your own learning curve into account, and also tying into later the AI driven aspect as well, right? So I think what we're doing here is really pioneering in many ways. So that actually segues us into the next question. Is we're actually starting to see this field, this learning method become increasingly popular, with courses being modeled around it, as well as increased student interest around the world. What are some of the current and most viable use cases of this learning method?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the answer is relatively complex. I have seen many very impressive cases of gamified learning, and we are also seeing a stronger push from the gaming industry as well. There are several games, blockbuster games even, that have been somehow utilized in gamified learning. For example, I believe it was one of the Assassin's Creed installments where the developers made this particular version for history education and things like that. So there are really, really strong, impressive use cases out there. And another point I would make here, that I think gamified learning is especially strong when learning is happening in multiple fronts. So we are using different educational techniques within those gamified learning platforms, but also that if those learners are also learning about these same things using other means too. So there is support there.
Definitely. Neville, do you have anything to add on that one?
No, I think that was perfectly well said.
Awesome. So, Ville, progressing into our next question, there's been a lot of noise, sort of / turbulent times in the crypto ecosphere recently. A lot of large-scale organizations being sort of pushed down, or sort of having a negative impact on the space for one reason or another. So, how do you see this sort of gamified learning playing a role specifically when it comes to the digital asset realm or cryptocurrencies in general? And are there any other sort of parallels or overlaps that you see with other industries?
I think the crypto space is really quite unique in that we sort of touched on this briefly already, in that the crypto space is really filled with uncertainty and doubt, even scams and things like that. People in general are very hesitant for good reason. So I think this adds really particular challenges here. So we need to make our information reliable and trustworthy and up to date. We need to make our platforms trustworthy. We need to make our games trustworthy as well, or these gamified learning solutions. So this will be a huge challenge for us, but also an interesting challenge. And I look forward to seeing what kind of an impact we can make here.
For sure. And, just to add to that, since we're talking about the crypto space in general, even development, talking about scams and whatnot and other projects, see, the crypto space has kind of evolved to want things delivered in a certain time frame, or to be delivered, adhering to your roadmap or whatnot. And we get a lot of that in our community as well, where when we don't meet a timeline, or we don't reach a milestone on time and things have to be delayed, there's a lack of patience, and rightfully so, because in this space, you said it very clearly, there's a lot of scams, right? And usually, more so than unusually, when there is a delay in something, it usually equates to an eventual scam. So it does get very challenging, even for us. It gets difficult to manage. Development is development. In our industry, when we develop something, it's not always perfect the first time. It's probably not perfect the 10th time, right? So when we have to push something out, it becomes difficult to manage the expectation, right? And maybe we could talk or segue a little bit into that before we move on to the next question. In your experience with other projects, and even in projects of your own, how do you manage expectation when it comes to delivering on your milestones and expectations on timeframes?
Yeah, that's a great question. We do have, we sort of use agile methods for that, for managing expectations with stakeholders and with our communities. We are a little bit lenient on those approaches, since we do work in academia, so things change a lot. Things are really sort of dynamic in that sense. But yeah, it's a tough thing to manage in general. We do prep our communities really strongly in advance. We do review existing research very thoroughly to make sure that we also manage the things well that we claim, or what sort of goals we set for ourselves. And then that also bleeds into those expectations, I believe.
Right on. Yeah, it's just a little wild, right? The differences between even the corporate world and the crypto world, right? So when we entered the crypto, the ecosphere, we came in with a corporate mindset. We came in and said, look, there's all these projects out there. They're developers, they're developing, whether they reach their goals and their milestones or not, that's a different question. But we approached it from a corporate standpoint, saying that, okay, we've registered a business, and now we've laid out a project plan. Right. And that project plan sometimes, of course, rightfully so, doesn't always go as planned. Right. You run into snags, you run into bugs. So it's just interesting to see or hear the perspective from the academia world and how closely it aligns to the crypto world. Right. Rather than just the corporate world. In the corporate world, it just kind of, business as usual. There's a delay. It's OK. We'll figure it out. And we reach our goal eventually. In the crypto world, it's a little bit different, right? So if you don't reach your goals, it kind of becomes, because of that uncertainty, because of course, the investors and the stakeholders, they don't know us on a personal level. They don't even know us as a business. They're kind of taking our word for it, and they're going along for the ride. So when we run into snags, whether it be development wise or regulation wise, or even academia, it becomes, for us, difficult to kind of address, right? And have it well received. So it's interesting to note and see that there, like, the similarities between the crypto world and the academia world in that sense. Sorry for going on this tangent, for sure.
Yeah, of course. The other side of that is we, in academia, we often measure, one of the biggest things we expect to have out of these kinds of projects are peer-reviewed publications. So we publish in HCI, we publish in journals and conferences, and these processes can take a long time. It's not unusual for it to take a year until we can actually get a paper out from the day we finish writing that paper. So these processes can be a little bit frustrating sometimes. We do tend to do fairly well in that space, so we usually get those papers out eventually. But we also have to have a lot of that patience, and we have to deal with rejection, and we have to deal with how our academic community receives the research we do.
And just speaking of challenges, rejections, snags, one could say that with all that this research partnership entails, we are pioneering crypto-focused education, right? So as with anything that has such a massive undertaking, there do come their challenges. So what are some of the challenges that you anticipate based on what you've seen and heard, or what can we expect coming up, Ville?
Okay, so I'm repeating myself a bit here, but this strongly goes back to that trust issue, where we need to build the trust of multiple stakeholders, communities, and also potential crypto investors. So how can we do that? Because there's a lot of uncertainty, and people are having trouble recognizing reliable, reputable, factual sources of information. So that's going to be one thing. Another challenge is that cryptocurrency is fairly, it entails fairly complex concepts. If we look at many other examples where gamified learning has been used to educate about certain topics, I would say cryptocurrency is very much on the sort of complex side of things. So developing that educational content is not trivial. And we also have to ensure that we are addressing multiple different demographics and people with different background knowledge, education levels, etc. So it's going to be a real challenge to develop educational content that works effectively for many people.
Sure, and that's kind of where the beta stages of our game will come into play, right? We're gonna we mentioned in the last AMA regarding the update for the gamified learning about the shift of focus, right? Before we kind of had level-based learning where, or topic-based learning rather, and now we're looking at more level-based learning. So every level would encompass topics from every single category of cryptocurrency and digital assets, but at different knowledge levels. And as you get through these levels, your knowledge would grow with it. So that's definitely going to help us when we're assessing how effective our game is in the beta stages, when we have level 1, for example, out for beta testing, and of course end user satisfaction reviewing, because it's going to help us understand, was that effective? Did you learn what we set out to teach you, in the sense that was the content accurate, right? Did you already know this? If not, how did you receive it, right? So it's definitely like level 1 and beta is going to help us, address specifically that, I think.
Yeah, and this is also where our research and research methods come into play. So learning outcomes and things like that are also relatively tricky to accurately assess and measure. So we can always have people come in and play our learning game. We could ask them about the experience, and we could test their knowledge too. But then, what is the long-term impact? What is the large-scale impact of these solutions? So what impact has it had months from then, and so forth. So testing these solutions will be also a challenge, but it will also lead to very interesting insights if we keep at it and we keep testing.
For sure. And then, for retention, I think some of the things that we talked about as a team, on how can we reward the gamers for pushing forward and continuing. So we talked about, rewarding them in different fashions, and being in the crypto space, we have the benefit of NFTs, for example. So we entertain the idea of, you beat a boss or a trainer and they become an NFT that you collect. Right. And, we can eventually get to a stage where, that NFT is unique to you based on your learning level. Right. So based on how you answer those questions, based on how well you did, that NFT could be more rare or less rare. Right. So there's a lot of fun things that we can do for retention, which will definitely help for this particular topic on pioneering and then also evolving what already exists as far as metaverse and things like in the digital asset space like NFTs are.
Yeah, for sure. It's an interesting space. We are dealing with really advanced and interesting technology, and I think that opens up a lot of cool possibilities for us to educate people using AI-driven approaches, etc., but also to reward people in interesting and novel ways, like you mentioned.
Awesome. Ville, so I have... let me check my list here. I have 3 more questions here for you before we'll sort of segue into an open mic for the community, a community question and answer. So all the members of the community that are listening in now, just brainstorm a little, have a question ready for Ville. But just on my end, the next question here, Ville, you briefly touched upon the AI element of things, right? So after we build out the initial content, those education modules, how and when does the AI-driven aspect kick in? And what are your thoughts on using AI technology tied into education?
So as I mentioned before, we are now developing or designing the sort of alpha version of that educational content. So I think it does require a bit of an iterative process where we need to test that content with real users, improve it in cycles, keep testing it. And once we have what we believe is educational content of sufficient quality, and then I think we can start looking at the AI-driven approach and how that could help disseminate, so to speak, that educational content. And I think it has real advantages here in terms of making education more effective. If someone already knows about important concepts, we don't need to spend time on that. We also want to make users or keep them engaged in such a way that we don't bore them with things that they already know. And this also goes back to that an earlier point about trying to cater to people from different backgrounds with different knowledge levels, etc. So how can we create solutions that are useful and engaging to people at multiple stages? And I think AI is the solution here.
For sure. And I've mentioned it in the past as well that, like we don't want this to be a cookie cutter experience where, everyone, can create a cheat sheet on how to pass the Steam Exchange gamified learning experience, right? So we definitely want everyone coming into playing the game, starting at a base level together, but quickly have the AI kick in and realize their actual knowledge level. So like you mentioned, not bore them with, content they already know, maybe challenge their knowledge a little bit with advanced concepts of that topic, and then move on to and push them towards a different topic that maybe they weren't so strong in, and also at the same time have the AI pay attention to how well they're answering questions, or how well they're receiving the knowledge that they're gaining. So if they ever need to in the future levels circle back to a concept, it's able to do so. So that way everyone's learning experience is a little bit different, and no one has the same journey as far as their learning goes, because that's kind of the reason we're doing this, is because all the knowledge and learning that's available today online is generic, is very general, and everyone gets or consumes the same knowledge, and that's not always effective in retaining that knowledge, right? So definitely AI was the way we wanted to go, and we're definitely happy with where we're going with it.
Absolutely. I think, Neville, you hit that bang on the nail, right? Right now, the information available out there is surface level. Everyone's taking in the same thing. But when you have an AI component to it that actually is intuitive, teaches you and learns along with you, I think that's something truly unique, right? So, to our knowledge, progressing into the next question, relate to our knowledge, this is the first time across the crypto landscape that a prestigious academic institution has partnered with the DeFi protocol, the DeFi organization. We know there was a lot of effort put into this behind the scenes to secure this partnership. But how do you see this relationship benefiting the global education and learning landscape as well?
Yeah, so I think one of our primary goals, of course, is to educate potential investors about cryptocurrency, so and just generally increasing awareness and knowledge about this space. So on one hand, we want to help people make more informed decisions, and this decision can be a decision to make investments, to get into cryptocurrency trading. At the same time, it can also be a decision not to get into it. So we want to be responsible, ethically responsible about this as well. We want to increase trust of the public towards companies or cryptocurrency companies that are legit. And I think we as HCI researchers are in a unique position to make a change here, since we can bring together people and real users and investors and cryptocurrency companies, as well as many other people from different disciplines.
For sure. And, that also kind of ties into what we talked about from an organizational perspective, and as a business, we said that it's not about bringing people to use Steam Exchange. That was never our goal. Our goal was always to make sure that people coming into the crypto ecosphere or trading digital assets for the first time did so responsibly, whether it be within the Steam Exchange ecosystem or in general. And then I guess people don't typically understand that concept, right? From a business perspective or a project perspective, of course, we would want to have everyone use Steam Exchange. But we do believe that, through the development processes and through the research and the partnerships that we have, that people will naturally, organically gravitate towards using Steam Exchange. And if so, that's great. But that was never our objective. And I'm happy you mentioned that, that it's about learning in general. And that's how we're going to kind of cater to other academia around the world, and hopefully trigger a spark where other people and other projects and other teams try to do the same thing or something similar, just to generate that knowledge and adoption in the correct way, rather than telling your buddy, tapping them on the shoulder, hey, go buy into this project. We want people to kind of do their own research and figure things out through the power of knowledge.
Yeah, and I think on an even broader scale, we know across the globe, policies and laws are sort of dragging behind when it comes to cryptocurrency. So this kind of research could also inform policy making and decision making on a larger scale, hopefully.
Absolutely. And just my last question before we segue into the community questions is, we know this technology around blockchain, the blockchain technology is here to stay. How do we continue to do our bit to ensure that users remain abreast and are receiving the latest and most accurate information?
Yeah, I think this fits into the AI approach where I mentioned the challenges of designing and generating educational content, but at the same time, perhaps an even bigger challenge there is this information does change, like you mentioned. So how do we incorporate that into this learning content? How do we make sure the content stays up to date? And I think AI can help there as well. And another approach is to somehow try to integrate learning modules with crypto trading platforms, which is pretty much what was the starting point for this project, right? So how can we bring these two things together? So how can we utilize the trading platform that people are already coming to educate them and keep them informed? And I think this is the answer here. If we do our best in bringing these two things together.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you there, Ville. I think that does bring us to the tail end of our set of questions. The community, this is an ask for your questions. Please do raise your hands. If anyone wants to, stay away from the mic and just have the questions conveyed over text, feel free to do so as well. But this is your opportunity. So anyone raise your hands and we'd be happy to process those questions one by one. Perfect. I do see Sir Diga with his hand up. Sir Diga, please unmute yourself. There you go. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm all right. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi. Basically, I just wanted to know that what we do a lot in the games industry. We focus people who have disabilities and stuff like that. So I wanted to know, have you guys even thought about reaching out to people who are was it able-bodied? Unable-bodied was the correct term, basically. Like we work with companies such as Special Effect or Able Gamers. I wanted to know, have you ever thought of reaching out to any of those charities to work along building the game with those people in mind?
That's a great question. In our community, in the ACI community, and the academic community in general, we have started paying more and more attention to equity, diversity, and inclusion. So when we consider research and when we consider what participants to recruit for our studies, these are very strong considerations all the time. So I would say, yes, we do have plans on reaching out to many underrepresented groups in Canada, in our local region, as well as globally, to try and get their opinion and their experience on our gamified learning platforms as well. So yeah, I think it's a great question, and it's certainly something that should be a consideration every time we do research.
Cool.
Thank you for that, Sir Diga. I do see a couple of questions trickling in over chat. Here's the first one. How involved is Waterloo with blockchain, and have they worked with some other blockchain companies in the past?
So I can't really speak to that, unfortunately. We are, the University of Waterloo has really world-class research groups, departments all over the place. We are not all just one community, so I don't, in fact, necessarily even engage with most faculty who do work in this space. But as far as the community goes that I'm involved in, I'm not really aware of research, other research in this space, but I'm sure it is taking place in maybe some of the other engineering departments and all that, but I wouldn't really have that information here. So unfortunately, I'm not sure.
No worries at all. That's a fair response. Okay.
Yeah. So sorry, before we move on to the next question, Viraf, we went to the Waterloo Cybersecurity Conference a couple months ago, and that was one of the points of feedback that we provided to that panel was that there's really not much representation for blockchain technology as far as cybersecurity goes, and I think what we accomplished there was identifying the reason for it. It's because blockchain technology evolves so fast, and the vulnerabilities and the exploits within that space, within our space rather, is so advanced in the sense that in order to exploit something, you'd have to be a significant hacker or a significant coder to, first of all, figure out what the vulnerability is and then how to exploit it. So we did actually speak to some of the organizations, the organizers of that event, to bring blockchain security and blockchain technology more to the forefront of their program at the Waterloo cybersecurity side. So hopefully we see some more progress in understanding blockchain technology, number one, and of course then the security that backs blockchain technology.
It's definitely so. I have two more questions that have trickled in. One's an interesting one. So Ville, this one's for you. How many students on average do you teach per semester?
I love that question. It varies quite a bit, actually, but my fall term this year and the same, it was the same case last year. I'm teaching 3 courses, so that is around 200 students, almost 280 or so. So we are dealing with a lot of students for sure. Our individual courses or sections, as we call them, they can have anything from 30 to 60, even 70 students. But right now, my courses are pretty full. So
I'll ask a follow-up to that, though, actually. So I remember when we were at the tail end of finalizing our agreement for our research partnership, you came and identified Hilda as a strong candidate. So we've never asked this question, but I guess it's a good opportunity in this kind of open panel to ask. So what about Hilda kind of stood out to you and made you feel that she would be perfect for our project and developing and helping in this gamified learning experience?
Yeah, so this actually, I would say we and myself in particular got extremely lucky that we got Hilda to work on this project. Hilda has done amazing job so far, and I'm sure she continues to do so. So Hilda is, we have a bit of an unconventional setup there. Hilda is a first-year PhD student who is actually formally supervised by 2 other professors that we briefly mentioned, Leah Zhang-Kennedy and Leonard Nake. But it just so happened that Hilda's schedule and time frame aligned very well with this project. And it turned out Hilda was interested in cryptocurrency and gamification and also privacy and security. So we, with the other professors, decided it might be good for Hilda to spend her first year working on this project and also use this project to sort of look into things that could potentially interest her and how she might want to shape her PhD going forward. So things just worked out extremely well there for all parties involved, I think, and I'm really happy that someone as capable as Hilda is on board.
Absolutely, Hilda is a superstar. We've had another question trickle in, and this one I think might be best suited for Neville. What topics will be covered in the game? Is there any insight into some of the levels, and how would we classify that?
Yeah, I'm really happy the question wasn't when launch. That's good. It's refreshing. So definitely, we're looking at introduction to digital assets, right? So what is a cryptocurrency? All the housekeeping items. What is a blockchain? What is validation? What are blocks? What are miners? So all the rudimentary things that you don't necessarily learn through these types of learning mechanisms. I can't personally remember going through a learning experience on a platform that taught me at such a rudimentary level for me to actually understand what's happening behind the scenes. So that's number one. And then we're going to go into, how to trade. What are the different types of trading mechanisms? Are there open orders? How to identify your closed orders, analyze them, things like that. We want to get into technical analysis. We want to get into, blockchain technology and how blockchains work. So there's a lot of I guess the spectrum of knowledge that you're going to receive from the gaming experience is broad. You're going to learn enough from each topic that we want to teach for you to become an expert in making your own decisions soundly, right? So the goal here is not to make, blockchain engineers or smart contract developers. The goal here is that, when you're making your trade, you have all these concepts at the back of your mind, and that you trade responsibly.
100%. And just a segue to that is, will there be a cost associated with this entire learning experience?
So we were definitely not looking at selling this game or charging to use this game. We definitely want as much adoption as possible. We want this game to reach places where, affordability is not always the case, especially those places, because of course, investing when your means are so low is always a difficult decision, and the risk is always significantly higher. So we definitely don't want to charge for this experience. Maybe down the road, when you start collecting these NFTs and these rewards, you can start trading amongst yourselves peer to peer. And then, of course, if you're interested in a trait or an asset that you don't have, it may be possible to buy it or something like that. There may be in-app, qualifications and stuff like that that you can buy, or maybe you can purchase, lives, or you're facing a boss, you got 3 questions wrong, so you're not eliminated. You may have one more shot. We may do stuff like that. We talked about elements where we involve costs for those things, because of course there's infrastructure costs and whatnot that we have to maintain as an organization. So we're going to look for ways to mitigate some of those. But overall, we're not looking to charge to play this game, because that's not the mission or the objective of this, right? It's not to generate revenue, it's to generate adoption.
100% spot on. And I think just to round us up with the last question here is, after these sort of learning modules, or after one completes them, is there some form of a certification that one can receive? How do we go about that process?
So I guess that's both Billy and I can answer this question. So we were actually interested, when we were looking at the different programs that were available to us, especially through the economic growth side, about micro credentials, right? So once you complete this game, with the trust, like Ville mentioned trust earlier, and the reputation of the University of Waterloo and Stratford, generating micro-credentials, where once you've done your program or your game and you've reached a certain level, maybe we can figure out a way to provide micro-credentials that qualify you, which then aligns to what we want to accomplish with accredited and qualified investors, provide micro-credentials for the OSC side of things, where we say, okay, user A has reached, qualified investor status. Here's their certificate, or here's their qualification code, or something like that to satisfy them on their side. So actually, Ville, I guess a follow-up question or a tied-in question, what is the process to start looking at micro-credentials and providing micro-credentials through our gamified learning?
I think there's a lot of research on that, and it also links strongly into keeping learners motivated and engaged with their content. So we need to make sure that we are consistently rewarding them, and rewards are aligned with the amount of effort and the level of their achievements. So we want to keep users engaged and reward them consistently throughout the experience. And at the end of the day, I think we have a lot of, we talked about how the crypto space is really unique, and we are dealing with unique technology. We have really a lot of room to be dealing with. We can be really creative here. And we also spoke about integrating learning content with cryptocurrency trading platforms. So that could also bleed into, those could be merged together more strongly, even where completing certain things or achieving certain status with the learning content could open up different and newer functionalities in the trading platform. So I think there are a lot of ideas there to throw around, but these would need to be studied, and we would need to see how well these things work and how they are received by our users.
Absolutely. You have a couple more questions trickling in, but I think in the interest of time, I think we can round this up. Ville, I do want to say thank you so much once again for your time. This was a really intuitive AMA session. I hope you learned a lot as well. So thank you once again so much for your time.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Perfect. Neville, just before we call it a day, I want to just bring you back in for a closing statement if you can, sir.
For sure. Thanks, Viraf. I think we touched on a lot of the topics that or questions rather, that have come up. And I'm happy you put those questions together for Ville to kind of address firsthand. It's definitely not easy to get through this research element or the research part of the development because, like we mentioned previously in the AMA, things are always changing, right? There's always new policy, new regulation, and it sometimes gets difficult to keep up. So, based on where we are in our research, and of course, Hilda, did an amazing, tremendous job at putting that together, and the paper that we looked at and analyzed. I think that we're in a good spot as far as our knowledge base goes, right? So evolving from there, I think, is going to be easier, right? And I think that as we grow and as research continues and as more questions like these come up in our community, I think that we're going to get into a really good position to build out these levels and make sure that the content that we're delivering is adequate and is good enough to retain and have people continue their journey, their learning journey. Because at the end of the day, it's not about, how many people are trading through Steam Exchange. It's how we've contributed to mass adoption, right? What we did as an organization to contribute to mass adoption to crypto in general. And of course, if by proxy, other academia and other, faculties from around the world, jump onto that same bandwagon and say, hey, Waterloo and Steam Exchange, Stratford and Steam Exchange, they're working on this game. Why don't we work on something similar on a different concept, on a different topic? And maybe as a crypto community in general, we can create knowledge that creates a safer crypto space. So I definitely want to thank everyone for joining the AMA, and for sure I want to thank Ville for taking the time out of his day to join us as well. Definitely a long time coming, and we definitely hope to have you on again for sure.
I was just going to say, with the amount of interest around this AMA, Ville, we will have to bring you on sometime soon when we made some progress.
Yeah, for sure. Let's do that.
Perfect. And guys, just as a tail end, for those of you who haven't yet, please do go have a look at the article that the Stratford School of Business did put out. It has been disseminated. I think Yahoo Finance, Business Insider, a couple of other large-scale news outlets have picked it up as well. So if you haven't yet, that's a good overview, a good summary of what this research partnership entails. But for now, that's all we have. Thank you all so much for your time, and I hope everyone has a pleasant rest of your day.
Take care, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.